Deep within the Jedi Temple, far below halls bustling with Padawans and Jedi Masters, lies an archive shrouded in secrecy. Rows of shelves stretch endlessly, their contents concealed behind thick glass barriers and protective energy fields. Scrolls yellowed with age rest quietly alongside holocrons, ancient repositories of knowledge glowing faintly, humming softly in the darkness. Each one is meticulously catalogued yet intentionally hidden, accessible only to a select few. These archives remain undisturbed, their silence punctuated solely by the rhythmic pulse of forbidden holocrons, whispering secrets unheard by living ears for centuries. Most Jedi spend their entire lives unaware of this chamber's existence. Those who do know rarely speak of it, even in whispers. Officially, it doesn't exist. Unofficially, it is called the Vault of Shadows, a place where the Jedi Council has stored away techniques deemed too dangerous, too corruptive, or simply incompatible with their core principles. Here, knowledge is treated like an unstable explosive, carefully preserved yet intentionally kept out of reach. The philosophy of the Jedi Order is clear. The pursuit of wisdom comes with necessary limitations. But those limits have always sparked quiet debates, behind closed doors, during late-night council meetings, and in hushed corridors. The concept of Jedi censorship is rarely addressed openly. Jedi Masters teach younglings that knowledge is a beacon, illuminating the path toward enlightenment. Yet certain beacons burn so brightly that they risk blinding those who approach them. To avoid temptation or misuse, some Force abilities have been deliberately suppressed, hidden away to protect the Order from itself. Critics within the ranks argue quietly about whether this practice shields the Jedi or denies them growth. Supporters insist that protecting the Order's morality must come first. Both sides acknowledge that the stakes are high. History has shown, again and again, how quickly great power can become uncontrollable. The tension between preservation and prohibition echoes through every sealed holocron and hidden scroll. On one hand, the Jedi have a responsibility to maintain and honor the wisdom of countless generations. Destroying this knowledge entirely would betray the Jedi's fundamental respect for history. On the other hand, openly teaching powers known to break minds, fracture souls, or twist reality itself would endanger not just the Order, but the galaxy at large. This fragile balance has guided Jedi policy for thousands of years, influencing decisions that shaped galactic history in ways known only to a select few. Over time, the Jedi have crafted an intricate system of safeguards designed to protect against accidental discovery. Advanced security measures restrict access to senior archivists and council members alone. Yet even among these trusted few, discussions regarding the vault's contents are exceedingly rare. The act of accessing forbidden techniques is itself a moral dilemma. Jedi archivists, trained to respect and nurture knowledge, must reconcile their duty to preserve these dangerous teachings with the directive to prevent their dissemination. It's a delicate dance, one performed silently behind reinforced doors, away from curious eyes. Throughout history, certain Jedi have occasionally defied the ban, convinced that controlled experimentation might yield beneficial results. Some sought to use forbidden techniques against formidable Sith adversaries, believing extreme threats justified extreme measures. Others hoped to reclaim lost arts, convinced they could master powers previous generations had feared. In almost every case, the results were tragic. Records hidden within these walls tell of Jedi who lost themselves to madness, succumbed to darkness, or vanished entirely after meddling with prohibited knowledge. Their names became footnotes, quietly removed from official histories, their existence hinted at only by encrypted holocron whispers. Despite this grim pattern, questions persist about whether the Jedi's caution is ultimately beneficial or dangerously restrictive. Opponents of the policy contend that true strength requires understanding even dangerous truths. Suppression, they argue, breeds ignorance, leaving Jedi vulnerable to hidden threats from those who ignore such restrictions. Like the Sith, advocates counter that boundaries are necessary precisely because power corrupts so predictably. The debate remains unresolved, a secret ideological conflict simmering beneath the calm facade of Jedi unity. Hidden within these forbidden archives are the fragmented echoes of Force abilities whose mere existence challenges Jedi principles. Techniques to control minds, to rewrite life, or to alter the fabric of reality itself remain documented, locked away but undeniably real. Each carefully sealed away ability whispers quietly, beckoning to those who might listen, offering promises of unmatched power or warnings of untold disaster. As this exploration begins, these whispers grow louder, more insistent. Behind every locked holocron lies a story of potential discovered and feared, of Jedi who glimpsed forbidden truths and faced ruin. Ahead lies a journey through the secret history of the Jedi, illuminating not just what was banned, but why the Jedi felt they had no choice. These forbidden powers survived because hiding them was safer than trying and failing to erase them altogether. Thus, beneath the temple's polished surface, the vault of shadows waits patiently. Each sealed scroll and pulsing holocron anticipates the moment when someone dares once again to listen closely, determined to uncover the truths the Jedi have spent millennia keeping silent. What made Memory Walk especially cruel was its intimacy. It bypassed the physical altogether, striking directly at the psyche. Captives weren't just reminded of trauma, they were made to relive it, moment by agonizing moment. The results were often catastrophic: madness, emotional collapse, and in some cases, complete psychological breakdown. Despite its Sith origins, the technique's efficiency in extracting information seduced a handful of desperate Jedi during war. They used it sparingly, with supposed restraint. But the Force has never distinguished between temporary and absolute when it comes to darkness. Those Jedi paid heavily, often losing their emotional grounding or falling into lifelong despair. What became increasingly clear was that Memory Walk harmed not only its victims, but its users. To wield it, one had to channel raw malice, something the Sith embraced, but which Jedi were never meant to touch. Even brief exposure left moral wounds. Jedi Knights who dabbled in the technique often found themselves haunted, unstable, and unable to return to the person they once were. The Council swiftly classified it as forbidden, not just for its cruelty, but because it compromised the very foundation of Jedi identity. Compassion, restraint, mental clarity, these could not coexist with a weapon that demanded the invocation of torment. Still, some tried to justify its use. One such case was Master Varen Pell, a Jedi Shadow who secretly employed Memory Walk on a high-risk mission. He succeeded in ending a critical conflict, but the cost was steep. Upon returning, Varen was celebrated, but those close to him soon noticed the cracks, the distant stare, the anxiety, the inner unrest. He left the Order not long after, vanishing into exile. His story became a whispered warning about power purchased at the cost of one's soul. What made Memory Walk even more insidious was its lingering effect. Victims, even years later, suffered phantom visions, panic, and emotional instability. Families bore the burden of wounds no healer could treat. Not even the Force, in its gentlest form, could fully restore what this technique destroyed. And yet Memory Walk wasn't erased from history. Jedi tradition insisted on preserving even the most dangerous knowledge, to guard against future rediscovery, to study its risks, to remember. Buried deep within sealed vaults, it remains locked away, not forgotten, but deliberately hidden. Today, it stands as a grim artifact of Jedi history, a reminder that some powers are corrosive by nature. The temptation to use them may never fully fade, but the scars they leave, on mind and spirit alike, ensure that the warnings echo louder than the whispers of effectiveness ever could. Unlike physical death, Sever Force extinguishes the very essence of a being, leaving them spiritually hollow, stripped of purpose, identity, and meaning. The technique first gained notoriety during the Sith War, when Jedi Master Nomi Sunrider used it on the fallen Jedi Knight Ulic Keldroma. Her goal was to stop him without killing him, but the result was something far worse. Ulic became a ghost of himself, robbed of the force that had once defined him. He spent the rest of his life in exile, broken and incomplete, seeking a redemption that never arrived. His fate rattled the Jedi Order. Sever Force, though effective, clashed violently with Jedi ideals. To deliberately cut a living being from the Force was seen by many as a spiritual amputation, an irreversible act that denied the victim any chance of growth or redemption. The ability ignited deep philosophical debates. Some argued it was a necessary evil in extreme cases. Others warned that wielding such absolute power undermined everything the Jedi stood for. Ultimately, the Jedi Council classified Sever Force as forbidden. It vanished from training materials, with remaining knowledge locked away in encrypted archives, taught only as a cautionary tale. The official stance was clear. This was not a tool, but a warning. Still, the temptation lingered. In moments of desperation, whispers of its use surfaced. Jedi shadows acting in secrecy, believing the stakes justified the cost. Yet every such account ended the same way, with damage done not just to the victim, but to the Jedi who dared to use it. Emotional scars ran deep, the consequences echoing long after the mission ended. Sever Force illuminated a painful contradiction in Jedi philosophy: the struggle to uphold compassion while facing enemies who show none. It presented a clean solution to impossible problems, but at a moral price the Order refused to normalize. Over time, even mentioning it became taboo, its presence reduced to cryptic references and cautionary lectures. Today, Sever Force remains buried, locked behind layers of silence and secrecy. Its existence endures not as an option, but as a reminder. Some powers, no matter how effective, extract a cost too steep for the Jedi to pay. Like a guillotine kept polished but unused, it waits, quiet, sharp, and never forgotten. The Sith Lord Darth Nihilus brought Force drain to catastrophic prominence. Known as the Lord of Hunger, he embodied the technique's most terrifying potential. His existence depended on devouring life energy, not out of vengeance or malice, but a boundless craving that defied reason. Entire worlds like Qatar were stripped bare, populations extinguished in moments, cities left lifeless and still. Nihilus didn't attack with armies or fleets. He fed, erasing life from orbit with unseen tendrils of darkness, leaving only silence in his wake. This power didn't just devastate others, it devoured its wielder. Sith records suggest that prolonged use of Force drain corrodes the soul. Even among Sith Lords, many feared it. Darth Nihilus lost more than his body. He lost his identity, consumed by the very hunger he unleashed. Eventually, he became less a man and more a void in the Force itself, mindlessly feeding until he was finally stopped. This effect disturbed even his dark peers. Sith philosophy may embrace power, but Force drain represented a loss of control, an endless surrender to need. Sith holocrons warned of its addictiveness, teaching that while domination was the Sith ideal, succumbing to unquenchable hunger led only to self-destruction. For the Jedi, Force drain was more than forbidden. It was sacrilege. The Force to them is a sacred current that binds and nourishes life. To weaponize it in such a grotesque, parasitic way was to pervert its very essence. Jedi healers, attuned to the energy of life, were especially disturbed by Force drain's existence. It wasn't just dark, it was a spiritual violation. Understandably, Jedi archives avoided preserving details about the technique. Those who studied it, often in secret, did so under extreme caution. Holocrons discussing it were encrypted and locked away, their access restricted to only a handful of masters. Jedi preferred to bury the knowledge rather than risk its resurgence, choosing silence over exposure. Yet this secrecy posed a dilemma. Shielding future generations from the method also left them unprepared, should the power resurface. Some Jedi quietly argued that understanding its mechanisms might be the only way to defend against it, but the Order remained firm. Certain knowledge, they believed, was more corrosive than ignorance. Force drain, therefore, endures as a dark echo in the histories of both Jedi and Sith. The ruins of Qatar and the legacy of Darth Nihilus stand as enduring reminders of its catastrophic reach. Though Nihilus is long gone, the threat he embodied has not vanished. In the shadows, the knowledge survives, waiting, as always, for someone desperate or reckless enough to awaken it once more. Immortality has always fascinated Sith Lords, who relentlessly pursue ways to cheat death. Among their attempts, essence transfer stands out as particularly disturbing. Unlike traditional ideas of survival through legacies or Force ghosts, this technique offers literal immortality by allowing its user to invade and control the body of another living being. It grants the wielder an unnatural lifespan, effectively leapfrogging from host to host, each new body simply another vessel awaiting occupation. The technique itself originates from ancient Sith sorcerers, who understood life as expendable and bodies as temporary tools. Over centuries it evolved secretly in hidden Sith temples, recorded meticulously within dark holocrons guarded jealously by powerful Sith masters. Essence transfer became their ultimate secret, carefully concealed from rivals who might exploit its sinister potential. Yet the galaxy witnessed its terrifying consequences firsthand through Darth Sidious, known widely as Emperor Palpatine. After his apparent death aboard the second Death Star, Palpatine's malevolent spirit lingered, refusing to pass on peacefully. His essence survived by anchoring itself within clone bodies, vessels cultivated specifically to sustain his return. Each time Palpatine transferred his consciousness, he effectively discarded one physical form and invaded another, treating life itself with disdainful convenience. Palpatine's use of essence transfer revealed its grim reality clearly. Rather than granting true immortality, the practice turned its wielder into a parasitic presence. The clone bodies he inhabited rapidly deteriorated under his dark influence, aging prematurely and failing to sustain his overwhelming darkness. The Emperor's existence devolved into an endless cycle of invading new hosts, each conquest becoming more desperate and less stable. Even Sith loyalists serving him grew disturbed, viewing his repeated returns with fearful uncertainty. The horror extended beyond physical decay. Victims whose bodies were occupied through essence transfer experienced an unspeakable violation. Their identities were effectively annihilated, overwritten completely by the invading consciousness. Witnesses described watching loved ones transform overnight into unfamiliar beings, their personalities replaced entirely by Palpatine's chilling arrogance and cruelty. Friends, allies, Even family members became empty shells controlled by another, their original identities forever consigned to oblivion. Because of its inherently invasive nature, Jedi scholars classified essence transfer as the ultimate form of possession. Jedi teachings emphasize the sanctity of individual lives, respecting personal identity and autonomy above all else. To deliberately extinguish another's soul and occupy their body contradicted every principle Jedi held sacred. Jedi archivists described the practice with visible disgust, documenting it carefully only to ensure future Jedi understood clearly what they stood against. Despite these explicit condemnations, essence transfer remained attractive to ambitious Sith disciples who secretly sought forbidden methods to escape death. Sith holocrons buried in hidden locations across the galaxy still whispered the details of the ritual, tempting those daring enough to seek unnatural longevity. Sith lords often kept personal journals describing experiments, failures, and occasional successes using this dark art, passing warnings and insights quietly from master to apprentice. But even within Sith ranks, essence transfer remained dangerously controversial. Many Sith rejected it outright, not due to morality, but from practical fear. They recognized clearly that reliance upon essence transfer risked losing control over one's identity. Continuous transfer gradually eroded the user's original self, blurring lines between parasite and host until nothing recognizable remained. Sith valued power and dominance. Surrendering their sense of self, even for immortality, felt like a betrayal of their very purpose. Sith Lord Darth Bane himself warned future generations of essence transfer's hidden dangers. His writings cautioned that prolonged use created instability, causing practitioners to fragment mentally. Each successive transfer weakened their grasp on reality, splintering their identity until only madness remained. Bane argued that achieving immortality through conquest weakened Sith strength, turning powerful lords into ghosts, clinging desperately to life. His advice was mostly ignored, though his words continued echoing quietly through Sith teachings. Today, Jedi historians treat essence transfer with extreme caution, ensuring any reference remains buried deeply behind layers of secrecy. They consider the mere knowledge dangerous, understanding that even curiosity might lead ambitious students down irreversible paths. Jedi Masters prefer students remain unaware of the ritual's mechanics, carefully shaping lessons around warnings rather than specifics. Their goal is simple: deny this forbidden knowledge oxygen, starving temptation before it takes root. Still, despite Jedi caution, essence transfer lingers at the edges of galactic awareness. Rumors persist of ancient Sith holocrons whispering dark invitations, tempting curious minds toward forbidden immortality. Ambitious Sith acolytes still search quietly for forgotten temples where the technique's secrets may yet survive, promising eternal life at the cost of everything else. In the end, essence transfer remains a stark reminder of the depths Sith Lords willingly explore in their desperate quest for eternal life. Palpatine's repeated returns serve as haunting evidence that immortality gained through such darkness offers no true victory, only endless hunger and perpetual corruption. Jedi scholars continue documenting its dangers, ensuring future generations never forget how easily ambition can consume everything it touches. The technique waits silently, hidden, ready to tempt anyone willing to sacrifice identity for immortality, a sinister promise whispered through ancient holocrons, always just beyond reach. Among the galaxy's most terrifying force weapons, the thought bomb remains uniquely chilling. Created by the Brotherhood of Darkness, this devastating technique causes a psychic implosion, consuming every Force-sensitive being caught within its reach. Yet unlike other destructive powers, it doesn't kill its victims outright. Instead, it traps their minds permanently within an eternal nightmare, suspended forever in a conscious prison from which escape is impossible. This sinister weapon was first and last unleashed during the catastrophic Battle of Ruusan, nearly 1,000 years before the Clone Wars. Ruusan marked a brutal climax to generations of Sith warfare, with both Jedi and Sith struggling desperately for dominance. In the final moments of defeat, Sith Lord Khan and his followers turned in desperation to the Thought Bomb, a ritual documented within Sith archives, powerful enough to end their enemies and their suffering simultaneously. What they failed to foresee, however, was the terrible price such a weapon would exact. As Jedi nights closed in, Khan's Sith Lords unleashed the Thought Bomb deep within the caves beneath Ruusan's surface. A pulse of psychic energy instantly erupted, engulfing both Sith and Jedi alike. Those caught within its invisible grasp experienced an intense, blinding flash of terror and anguish. Seconds later, their physical forms collapsed lifelessly, their bodies mere shells emptied of consciousness. But their minds endured, locked away permanently inside the expanding psychic echo created by the explosion. Each victim remained vividly aware, frozen in torment, unable ever to rest or find peace. The psychic devastation left behind by the Thought Bomb lingered in the Force, resonating through Ruusan's underground caverns like an endless, anguished whisper. Survivors who later explored the aftermath described unsettling sensations, hearing faint screams and feeling oppressive sorrow radiating from the empty darkness. The area became known as the Valley of the Jedi, serving simultaneously as a memorial to those lost and as a permanent warning about the weapon's consequences. Despite its catastrophic results, the Thought Bomb initially appeared tempting to a few Jedi tacticians. Its potency offered a grimly effective solution against overwhelming Sith numbers, an extreme measure for extreme circumstances. Secret debates took place within the Jedi Council chambers about whether to document or erase knowledge of the technique altogether. Ultimately, though, witnessing the eternal torment inflicted upon Force users, even enemies, horrified most Jedi, solidifying their resolve to reject it completely. As records of Ruusan's horrors reached the Jedi archives, Masters classified the Thought Bomb as uniquely abhorrent. Officially labeled a crime against life itself, the Council unanimously decided not merely to forbid teaching the power, but to deliberately suppress memory of its very existence. Jedi historians received strict instructions. Remove all explicit references from commonly accessible archives, leaving only heavily encrypted, fragmented accounts to caution senior Jedi Masters discreetly. The Jedi Council hoped future generations would never again face the temptation or tragedy witnessed at Ruusan. Still, concealing such knowledge proved complicated. Veteran Jedi historians privately expressed concerns about burying painful history, suggesting careful study might prevent future misuse. Yet senior Masters remained adamant, believing complete censorship safer. They argued any trace knowledge of the Thought Bomb risked inspiring reckless curiosity. The weapon's devastating consequences convinced them some secrets were best kept deeply buried beneath layers of Jedi silence. In secret records known only to a handful, accounts survived describing attempts by rogue Sith followers to replicate the Thought Bomb. But those isolated efforts ended swiftly, typically resulting in madness or failure. The exact rituals and specifics required to trigger the Thought Bomb remained elusive, safeguarded by layers of encoded barriers and incomplete fragments left deliberately vague by Jedi archivists. Ancient Sith holocrons whisper cryptically about Ruusan, providing sinister but incomplete guidance designed more to frighten than instruct. Today, Ruusan serves as a stark lesson about unchecked desperation and ambition. The psychic scars inflicted by the thought bomb remain palpable centuries later. Explorers who venture into the Valley of the Jedi report lingering echoes, feelings of dread, sorrowful whispers, and ghostly visions flickering briefly before fading again into silence. Jedi historians discourage visits, emphasizing respect and caution, fearing prolonged exposure could reawaken traumatic memories hidden deep within the Force itself. Yet, despite Jedi precautions, tales of Ruusan persist throughout the galaxy as whispered ghost stories, quietly reminding listeners of power's seductive danger. Sith acolytes searching ancient temples occasionally uncover vague references, tempting them toward forbidden paths. The thought bomb, though outlawed and hidden away, never completely disappears. Instead, it remains present as an eternal warning, quietly reminding Force users of the horrifying potential consequences hidden behind unchecked ambition. Ultimately, the thought bomb illustrates a critical lesson. Some Force powers exact prices too high for any victory to justify. Its legacy endures not merely as historical tragedy, but as a quiet reminder of boundaries that should never again be crossed. Ruusan stands forever as silent testimony, an eternal prison of agony, captured in time, endlessly cautioning those who dare disturb its silence. Of all the terrifying powers ever wielded by Sith Lords, none matched the sheer devastation of the Force Storm. Unlike lightning or telekinetic attacks, the Force Storm wasn't merely destructive. It tore directly through the very structure of reality. The ability created massive tears in space-time, unleashing a violent maelstrom capable of swallowing entire starships, planets, and even entire star systems. With a simple gesture, its wielder could rip open the fabric of space itself, hurling chaos into the universe. Historical records offer only fragmented glimpses into Force storms, as knowledge of their creation and control remained tightly guarded. However, one figure emerged from obscurity to demonstrate its horrifying potential on a galactic scale: Darth Sidious himself. Near the climax of the Galactic Civil War, Sidious summoned a Force storm powerful enough to nearly obliterate the rebel fleet in orbit around the planet Da Sucha Phi. Witnesses aboard rebel ships described the phenomenon vividly, recalling an impossible darkness punctuated by violent, swirling lightning. Entire cruisers were pulled helplessly into the vortex, vanishing without a trace. This cataclysmic event wasn't mere chance. Sidious deliberately harnessed the Force storm as a weapon, channeling intense hatred and overwhelming dark side energies to fuel its creation. His mastery was frighteningly effortless. He conjured it almost casually, an act that terrified even seasoned Imperial commanders. Survivors spoke afterward of feeling reality itself buckling under the storm's pressure. Sensors malfunctioned, instruments flickered uncontrollably, and ships struggled against gravitational forces unlike anything previously experienced. Even other Sith Lords feared the Force storm's potential. Ancient Sith texts detailed the ability, but warned acolytes of its unpredictability and uncontrollable nature. Dark side masters cautioned apprentices that one momentary loss of concentration could spell disaster. Without perfect control, the storm would turn upon its creator, devouring allies, enemies, and entire fleets indiscriminately. Sith Lords, who explored the technique, carefully documented both their fascination and anxiety, leaving behind holocrons, whispering warnings about powers best left untouched. For the Jedi Order, the existence of Force storms posed a moral crisis. Jedi viewed the Force as a natural flow, a harmonious current meant to unite and sustain life. To them, deliberately ripping apart reality was profoundly unnatural, an act of cosmic vandalism. Jedi Masters argued fiercely against studying the phenomenon, fearing even cautious research might open doors best left closed. They believed exploring such destructive power risked losing touch with their ideals entirely, blurring the line between protector and destroyer. Thus, Jedi archives contained almost nothing about the Force storm itself, merely vague warnings embedded within historical accounts. Instead of detailed instructions, Jedi archivists emphasized philosophical principles that defined their order's approach to power. Young Jedi received explicit lessons stressing respect for the Force's delicate balance, deliberately omitting details of how that balance might be violently disrupted. Senior Masters quietly reminded each other of their responsibility to prevent future Jedi from repeating the mistakes of the past. The deliberate avoidance of Force storm knowledge extended beyond merely hiding texts and holocrons. Jedi Masters agreed privately that even witnessing the phenomenon presented significant psychological dangers. Jedi who briefly glimpsed its destructive capacity described feeling deeply unsettled, haunted by visions of entire star systems collapsing into darkness. Exposure threatened the clarity and composure Jedi relied upon, potentially eroding their ability to maintain emotional discipline in stressful situations. Protecting Jedi stability became another reason to deny access to such disturbing knowledge. Still, despite Jedi caution, rumors and whispers persisted across the galaxy, spreading accounts of the Force storm's immense power. Smugglers and traders quietly passed stories describing unexplained disappearances in deep space. Starships swallowed mysteriously, leaving behind no debris or survivors. Conspiracy theorists speculated wildly about secret Sith Lords continuing to experiment privately, seeking perfect control over a weapon that could reshape galactic politics overnight. Meanwhile, Imperial archives briefly contained detailed reports of Sidious's terrifying demonstration before being rapidly censored and sealed by frightened officials. Military strategists who witnessed the storm's impact argued internally about potential military applications, though most ultimately acknowledged the impracticality and unpredictability involved. Few commanders wanted to risk annihilation by unleashing uncontrollable chaos. Today, the Force storm stands as an unsettling cautionary tale within galactic history, a testament to how quickly ambition and unchecked power can spiral toward catastrophic results. Sidious's brief demonstration at Dar Sucha 5 remains a disturbing reminder of how fragile reality itself can become when manipulated carelessly. Jedi scholars continue emphasizing caution, underscoring their belief that the Force exists to connect and sustain, not fracture and destroy. The knowledge required to summon such storms remains tightly hidden, buried deep beneath layers of deliberate silence. Yet the Force storm's shadow lingers, a quiet threat whispered cautiously in Jedi training sessions and encrypted archives. Its memory endures, a powerful reminder that some doors must never reopen. The fabric of the universe itself seems to beg for silence, hoping desperately that such violent rifts remain forever closed. Dark transfer occupies a uniquely controversial place among forbidden Force abilities. While many dangerous techniques destroy life, this one holds the rare and unsettling power to restore it. By channeling the dark side through a positive intent, healing rather than harming, practitioners can close mortal wounds, halt death's approach, and seemingly defy nature itself. Yet despite appearing noble, dark transfer blurs ethical lines in ways the Jedi find deeply troubling. This technique gained notoriety through Cade Skywalker, descendant of the legendary Jedi Luke Skywalker. Cade demonstrated this rare skill repeatedly, reviving allies on the brink of death. His actions, though heroic on the surface, sparked controversy throughout the galaxy. Cade wasn't formally trained as a Jedi. Instead, his early life unfolded in a harsh environment, filled with violence and moral ambiguity. His exposure to both Jedi teachings and Sith corruption allowed him to navigate dangerous emotional territories other Force users avoided completely. Cade first showcased dark transfer after battles where lives hung by a thread. Allies bleeding heavily, barely breathing, would rise again through his touch. To outsiders, it looked miraculous, almost divine. Witnesses described it as an eerie, luminous glow enveloping wounds, knitting flesh seamlessly. Yet, behind this miraculous facade lingered subtle shadows of the dark side. Each healing drew visibly upon Cade's anger, frustration, and desperation, channeling those raw emotions into healing. His successes brought brief hope, but they left him increasingly drained and emotionally unstable. The Jedi Order, ever vigilant against temptation, immediately recognized the hidden peril lurking within dark transfer. Jedi Masters viewed it skeptically, cautioning Padawans that healing driven by darkness would inevitably exact a heavy personal toll. They reasoned it would erode the user's emotional balance, feeding negative feelings each time someone cheated death. Jedi feared reliance on dark transfer would slowly alter intentions, turning genuine compassion into desperate obsession. To them, healing must always come from a calm, serene place. Mixing darkness into that sacred act tainted both healer and patient. Despite this clear condemnation, younger Jedi debated the morality involved passionately. Could a power that saved lives truly be evil? Cade's actions undeniably rescued friends, preserved futures, and prevented suffering. He healed fatal wounds in minutes, something conventional Jedi healers took hours or even days to achieve. Yet older masters insisted the danger lay precisely in that ease. Quick solutions powered by darker impulses could easily tempt Jedi toward reckless shortcuts. They argued passionately that the slow, careful methods preserved Jedi humility and emotional clarity. Meanwhile, Sith Lords watched Cade's use of dark transfer carefully, intrigued by its potential. Sith alchemists had long experimented with combining healing and the dark side, but typically with disastrous outcomes. Their methods usually caused grotesque mutations or severe emotional damage. Cade's technique, though imperfect, succeeded where Sith rituals failed, indicating a delicate balance previously undiscovered. Sith holocrons began whispering rumors of this technique, quietly urging ambitious acolytes to explore similar methods, though warnings of catastrophic failure were always close behind. Cade himself eventually acknowledged the costs of his actions. Though he initially celebrated his triumphs, each use gradually intensified his internal struggles. Friends noticed his increasingly erratic moods, bitterness, and isolation. Emotional ties strained, friendships weakened, and Cade found himself wrestling privately with uncontrollable anger. He spoke candidly later about his regret, admitting healing driven by dark emotions left him scarred internally. Dark transfer saved others, but never without carving permanent wounds into his own spirit. Because of its dangerous emotional volatility, Jedi archivists quickly classified dark transfer as forbidden. Training curriculums refused even passing references to the technique, labeling it as inherently corruptive. Jedi healers carefully structured lessons around traditional healing practices, ensuring future generations relied solely upon calm meditation, patience, and serenity. Jedi Masters privately cautioned senior healers about watching younger knights closely for signs of temptation, determined to prevent another Cade Skywalker scenario. Still, despite Jedi suppression, dark transfer survives quietly within whispers, stories exchanged in dark cantinas or among renegade Force users. Tales of miraculous recoveries performed by mysterious strangers occasionally surface, raising eyebrows among Jedi Masters. Each time rumors arise, Masters investigate discreetly, determined to avoid public awareness. Jedi policy remains clear. Healing driven by darkness never truly heals. It merely shifts suffering elsewhere. Ultimately, dark transfer serves as a powerful reminder of the complex balance Force users must navigate. Its apparent miracles mask hidden dangers, subtly eroding morality beneath a compassionate surface. Jedi continue stressing caution, hoping young Padawans internalize these lessons deeply enough to resist temptation. Yet the technique's seductive promise persists, whispering quietly to Force users desperate enough to consider darker methods. The Jedi recognize its threat clearly. Some abilities tempt precisely because their results appear noble. Dark transfer offers healing but demands darkness, reminding every Jedi how easily good intentions can spiral dangerously toward shadow. Psychometry grants Force users the extraordinary ability to sense memories, emotions, and echoes of past events by simply touching an object. At first glance, it sounds helpful, even desirable. Many would welcome the chance to discover hidden truths or unravel mysteries just by holding an artifact. Yet behind its usefulness hides a deeply unsettling price, one the Jedi Order learned to fear. Psychometry doesn't filter experiences. Users witness every detail, every raw emotion, as if living through them firsthand. There's no shielding, no emotional distance. Instead, each impression strikes directly at the user's core, sometimes leaving behind lasting scars. Among Jedi, Quinlan Vos remains the most well-known practitioner of psychometry. His missions became legendary partly due to his uncanny skill in tracking criminals through traces left behind. Vos could touch discarded weapons, scraps of clothing, or personal belongings, and immediately see flashes of their past, faces, actions, even intentions. His talents gave the Jedi powerful insights, often providing the missing pieces necessary to solve dangerous cases. Yet, with every success came a hidden toll. Each new clue meant absorbing emotional pain and traumatic echoes from victims and perpetrators alike. The deeper Vos delved into darkness, the heavier his personal burden became. Psychometry's impact wasn't subtle or gradual. Every imprint carried intense emotional weight. For example, touching a murder weapon meant not just seeing the murder itself, but vividly experiencing the victim's final moments, their terror, desperation, agony. Even seasoned Jedi struggled to handle repeated exposure to such vivid trauma. For Vos, whose assignments regularly placed him near horrific crimes, the cumulative effect proved overwhelming. Friends and fellow Jedi quietly noted subtle changes in his demeanor, shifts in personality indicating internal struggles he couldn't fully hide. Despite Vos's strengths, his colleagues worried that psychometry constantly exposed him to dangerous emotional extremes. Jedi teachings emphasized tranquility, self-control, and balance. Psychometry often shattered that equilibrium by forcibly connecting the user with moments of intense suffering. Jedi Masters debated privately whether this gift served their mission effectively or undermined the Order's core ideals by pushing Jedi dangerously close to emotional instability. Ultimately, most agreed the dangers outweighed potential benefits. Yet psychometry wasn't easily abandoned. Quinlan Vos himself argued passionately that sacrificing personal comfort was necessary to achieve justice. His dedication convinced some masters to cautiously allow limited practice, closely monitoring practitioners for emotional burnout. This delicate balance worked temporarily, but Voss's experiences demonstrated clearly how quickly Psychometry's burdens accumulated. Over time, Voss struggled increasingly with emotional exhaustion and isolation, visibly worn down by constant mental intrusions. Historically, Psychometry presented similar problems for other Jedi gifted with its rare sensitivity. Archives contain discrete records of Jedi investigators who briefly attempted its use before suffering significant emotional distress. Many abandoned Psychometry entirely, overwhelmed by anxiety, recurring nightmares, or painful flashbacks. Jedi healers documented multiple cases where promising careers ended prematurely due to intense emotional fallout caused by psychometric impressions. Jedi who persisted risked severe psychological harm, sometimes even permanent withdrawal from active duty. Over generations, the Jedi Council gradually restricted psychometry training, treating it as dangerous knowledge requiring careful oversight. Masters taught Padawans to recognize psychometric impressions cautiously, encouraging emotional detachment whenever possible. Yet warnings only went so far. Young Jedi, eager to solve complex mysteries, often underestimated psychometry's emotional costs, assuming themselves strong enough to withstand impressions others couldn't handle. Tragically, some discovered too late that repeated exposure to trauma inevitably left lasting psychological wounds. Psychometry remains quietly controversial within Jedi circles today. While senior Jedi firmly discourage its practice, isolated cases occasionally appear, usually involving young knights desperate for quick answers during urgent missions. Jedi Masters carefully watch for signs of trauma, swiftly intervening whenever psychometric use appears likely. Older Jedi quietly remind younger knights of Quinlan Voss's struggles, hoping personal stories might deter reckless curiosity more effectively than abstract warnings alone. Outside Jedi circles, psychometry fascinates scholars and historians who view it purely as a remarkable investigative tool. They overlook, or perhaps misunderstand, the profound personal cost that accompanies every impression. Holonet documentaries occasionally romanticize psychometric abilities, portraying them as powerful shortcuts to solving mysteries without fully recognizing emotional damage inflicted upon users. Jedi find such portrayals troubling, fearing oversimplified perceptions could lead inexperienced Force sensitives toward unnecessary emotional risk. Ultimately, psychometry endures quietly within Jedi consciousness as an ambiguous, troubling gift. Jedi historians document Quinlan Voss's experiences with deliberate caution, emphasizing clearly that emotional exposure always accompanies knowledge gained through touch. Senior Jedi stress repeatedly that psychometry's intimacy with pain demands respect and extreme care. The technique remains available, quietly hidden within Jedi archives, whispered softly between masters and healers when training new investigators. Jedi recognize that psychometry offers powerful insights, but insist firmly that no insight justifies permanently sacrificing emotional balance. Its haunting impressions linger deeply, forever reminding practitioners that some truths exact painfully intimate prices. The Jedi Order respects psychometry's potential, yet deliberately keeps its secrets hidden, carefully guarding young Jedi from harm, while quietly acknowledging how easily truth and trauma can entwine. Through focused concentration, Jedi can uplift morale, sharpen strategies, and inspire entire armies to fight with exceptional skill and bravery. Soldiers describe feeling invincible under its influence, their fears melting away, replaced by absolute certainty in victory. Jedi historians proudly document numerous conflicts where battle meditation brought swift, decisive triumph, saving countless lives in the process. Yet, hidden beneath this celebrated history lies a troubling, rarely discussed truth. Battle meditation can just as easily be reversed to harm instead of help. The technique's power depends entirely on the intentions guiding it. Used improperly, it becomes a subtle tool of manipulation, capable of demoralizing enemies, spreading doubt, and breaking the spirit of entire armies. This darker aspect has always disturbed Jedi Masters, quietly fueling debates over the ethical boundaries of mental influence. One Jedi, Bastila Shan, demonstrated battle meditation's potential clearly, for better and worse. Her unique ability profoundly impacted battles during the Jedi Civil War, rallying Republic troops and giving them renewed courage during critical engagements. With Bastila guiding them, Republic forces felt unified and unstoppable, inspired by a shared sense of purpose. Yet, Bastila's capture by Sith Lord Darth Malak revealed the dangerous flip side. Under Sith influence, her powerful skill twisted into a weapon of psychological warfare. Republic soldiers who once drew courage from her presence suddenly found their confidence shattered, replaced by fear, confusion, and despair. Witnesses described Republic units collapsing into chaos when Bastila turned her meditation against them. Veterans of numerous victories suddenly panicked, abandoning positions or refusing to fight. Confident commanders faltered, hesitating where decisiveness once reigned. Battle meditation's effectiveness at weakening enemies was frighteningly clear, vividly illustrating how quickly inspiration could become oppression. Republic strategists quickly learned to fear Bastila's corrupted meditation far more than Sith lightsabers. This dual potential deeply unsettled the Jedi Order. Jedi teachings emphasize respect for individual freedom, encouraging people to find strength from within, rather than relying heavily on external influences. Battle meditation's subtle manipulation of emotions and minds seemed dangerously close to violating that principle. Jedi Masters began quietly debating the technique's morality, asking challenging questions about when influence became coercion. These debates often grew tense, exposing uncomfortable contradictions at the heart of Jedi philosophy. Senior Jedi argued that battle meditation's value justified occasional risks. Carefully controlled, it provided powerful advantages against overwhelming threats. Yet others questioned openly whether influencing emotions, even positively, crossed important ethical boundaries. They suggested that deliberately shaping thoughts or manipulating courage fundamentally undermined personal agency. Over time, these internal disputes prompted stricter guidelines around battle meditation, emphasizing restraint and careful intent. Despite increased caution, whispers persisted about isolated cases of questionable use. Some Jedi historians documented troubling moments where battle meditation pushed boundaries. Reports surfaced of commanders employing it aggressively during critical moments, subtly suppressing soldiers' doubts or fears to maintain morale. While these incidents rarely led to outright scandals, they quietly confirmed suspicions that battle meditation's darker potential wasn't purely theoretical. Outside Jedi circles, Sith Lords eagerly studied battle meditation's negative applications, recognizing its potential as a powerful psychological weapon. Sith archives detailed methods for amplifying emotional vulnerabilities, spreading panic, and systematically dismantling enemy resolve. Sith Lords considered the ability uniquely valuable precisely because it didn't require overt violence or physical destruction. Quietly undermining opponents psychologically could break entire armies without engaging directly, a tactic perfectly suited to Sith strategies emphasizing cunning and subtlety. These disturbing possibilities compelled Jedi Masters to tighten restrictions around teaching battle meditation. While never explicitly banned, lessons grew deliberately vague, emphasizing responsibility and restraint rather than power and effectiveness. Jedi instructors reminded Padawans that emotional manipulation always carried significant ethical risks. Masters carefully observed younger Jedi who expressed unusual enthusiasm for the technique, gently guiding their interests elsewhere to prevent temptation toward inappropriate use. Today, battle meditation occupies a carefully balanced place within Jedi practices, regarded simultaneously with pride and caution. Jedi scholars document its decisive historical roles while emphasizing clearly how easily good intentions can drift toward darker territory. Jedi Masters continue privately debating the subtle line separating inspiration from mental intrusion, carefully weighing potential outcomes before approving its use. They stress repeatedly that mental clarity, respect for individual autonomy, and absolute humility must always guide any Jedi who employs battle meditation, no matter how dire the circumstances. Yet despite these warnings, battle meditation's troubling potential quietly remains, lurking just beneath its celebrated surface. The technique illustrates clearly that some Force abilities carry inherent ethical complexity. They need no explicit darkness to cause dark outcomes. Jedi recognize this clearly, guarding carefully against subtle temptations hidden behind beneficial appearances. Battle meditation continues teaching Jedi powerful lessons about intention, responsibility, and the delicate boundaries separating influence from intrusion. Its history provides constant reminders that even noble intentions require vigilant moral awareness, cautioning Jedi never to underestimate how easily inspiration can blur quietly into invasion. Unlike lightsabers or blasters, it doesn't rely on direct physical violence. Instead, this horrifying ability attacks silently, creeping unnoticed through the bodies and minds of victims. By combining ancient Sith rituals with twisted scientific methods, alchemists created living weapons designed to spread disease and decay. Jedi historians documented these creations carefully, labeling them explicitly as atrocities against life itself. Historically, Force plague emerged during the darkest periods of Sith experimentation. Sith sorcerers delved deeply into forbidden alchemy, crafting unnatural blends of science and dark side rituals. Secret laboratories hidden on remote planets became breeding grounds for manufactured diseases, plagues deliberately engineered to target specific species, groups, or even entire populations. Sith records detailed experiments so gruesome that later generations sealed those archives completely, burying descriptions behind layers of secrecy. Victims of Force plague rarely recognized their peril immediately. Initially, symptoms seemed minor: headaches, fatigue, mild fevers. Within days, however, the situation deteriorated rapidly. Skin blistered painfully, internal organs failed without warning, and minds succumbed to madness. Jedi healers who encountered survivors recorded harrowing accounts, describing patients as living echoes of suffering. Sith designed these diseases not simply to kill quickly, but to weaken morale through prolonged agony. Sith alchemists viewed disease as a potent strategic weapon, precisely because it bypassed conventional defenses. Armies trained against blades, blasters, and bombs had little protection against invisible attackers spreading silently through their ranks. Infectious plagues demoralized entire civilizations, undermining trust and unity. Sith lords who employed Force plague openly gloated about its devastating effectiveness, boasting that their enemies had already lost before battles began. Perhaps the most disturbing feature of Force plague was its unnatural origins. Sith records described rituals involving horrific sacrifices and twisted scientific manipulations. Alchemists merged dark side energies with genetic experimentation, carefully crafting diseases that behaved intelligently, adapting swiftly, evading standard medical interventions. Each creation existed as a living embodiment of Sith cruelty, targeting victims with ruthless precision. Jedi reacted to Force plague with intense moral revulsion. Jedi teachings revered life as inherently sacred, emphasizing the duty to protect and preserve existence. Force plague represented a direct affront to these principles, deliberately corrupting the natural balance and turning life's fundamental processes into instruments of torture. Jedi healers openly condemned its existence, describing it as a perversion of nature itself, an irredeemable violation of life's most basic codes. For Jedi healers, confronting Force plague proved uniquely challenging. Standard medical practices, even those augmented by the Force, offered limited relief. Sith alchemists specifically engineered their creations to resist attempts at healing, leaving no known antidotes. Jedi healers worked tirelessly, attempting every available treatment, yet their successes remained frustratingly rare. Patients who survived frequently suffered permanent psychological and physical damage, carrying the scars forever. Jedi historians documented carefully that Sith Lords didn't limit themselves to biological decay alone. Sith also developed psychological plagues targeting minds directly, spreading paranoia, fear, and uncontrollable rage among victims. Armies afflicted mentally collapsed into disorder, discipline evaporating instantly. Jedi commanders described these psychological attacks as equally devastating, recognizing clearly how effectively emotional infections destroyed unity and cohesion from within. Due to its ethical implications, Jedi training programs deliberately omitted any detailed descriptions of Force plague. Masters warned students only briefly, emphasizing respect for life's sanctity. Detailed studies remained carefully hidden within restricted archives, accessible solely by senior healers. Jedi authorities deliberately minimized public awareness, fearing detailed knowledge might inspire dangerous curiosity. Despite Jedi precautions, Force plague persisted quietly within galactic consciousness. Rumors occasionally surfaced among fringe communities describing mysterious illnesses, linked vaguely to dark side energies. Traders whispered stories of abandoned worlds filled only with skeletal remains and haunting silence. Jedi Masters investigated cautiously, hoping desperately to prevent further outbreaks, often arriving too late, finding only desolation and pain left behind by unknown assailants. Sith Lords themselves recognized Force plague's destructive potential carried significant risks. Sith archives included cautionary tales describing accidental outbreaks within laboratories, where diseases escaped containment, consuming their own creators alongside intended victims. Sith Lords warned explicitly that crafting living weapons required extreme caution. Once unleashed, control vanished entirely, leaving no escape from indiscriminate devastation. Force plague thus endures quietly, representing one of the galaxy's most troubling and ethically horrifying creations. Jedi Masters continue carefully monitoring rumors, determined to prevent its resurgence. Sith holocrons hidden across distant worlds still whisper dangerous secrets, tempting ambitious minds with promises of power achieved silently, invisibly, without a single blade. Jedi understand clearly. Disease as doctrine brings nothing but suffering, sorrow, and endless destruction. Force plague remains forever condemned, carefully hidden away, yet quietly reminding all Force users that the darkest weapons leave no wounds visible to the eye, only permanent scars etched deeply into the soul. Force rage is perhaps the most deceptively alluring of the Jedi-Banned techniques. It grants immediate and intoxicating power, transforming anger directly into raw strength. Those who embrace it become faster, stronger, and nearly unstoppable in battle, their senses heightened beyond normal human limits. For a short time, Force Rage offers a feeling of absolute dominance, as though nothing in the galaxy could stand against you. But beneath its immediate rewards lies a heavy and often devastating cost. Unlike other Force abilities, Force Rage openly requires surrender to darker emotions. Practitioners deliberately focus on rage, hatred, and intense aggression, using these feelings as fuel. By embracing fury, they temporarily override physical limitations, gaining unnatural endurance and relentless determination. Historical records describe warriors under the influence of Force Rage fighting despite fatal wounds, moving with lightning-fast speed, and overwhelming opponents effortlessly. It promises victory, but never without deeply damaging consequences. Even the briefest use leaves permanent marks on the user's soul. Jedi who experimented cautiously with Force Rage quickly discovered its dangers. Archives hold accounts of knights who briefly employed the power during desperate combat scenarios, initially succeeding spectacularly. But these same knights later struggled with emotional instability, anger management, and violent outbursts. Each use weakened their internal discipline, making anger harder to control. Eventually, many succumbed entirely, losing themselves permanently to darkness. This harsh reality convinced Jedi Masters to forbid Force Rage entirely. They argued passionately that relying on rage fundamentally opposed Jedi values. Jedi teachings emphasize inner peace, emotional balance, and disciplined self-control. Force Rage undermines every one of those principles, encouraging practitioners to willingly abandon restraint. Masters reasoned that no victory could justify surrendering to hatred, especially since every brief lapse weakened resistance to future temptations. Gradually, the Council quietly removed any reference from official teachings, hoping to prevent future generations from repeating costly mistakes. Despite strict prohibitions, some Jedi continued testing Force Rage privately. Younger knights occasionally expressed curiosity, tempted by stories promising incredible battlefield advantages. Jedi historians documented several tragic cases where promising Jedi ignored explicit warnings, believing themselves strong enough to resist temptation. These knights inevitably learned harsh lessons, often too late. Afterward, survivors described overwhelming guilt, shame, and emotional turmoil. Jedi healers provided extensive therapy, attempting to restore their emotional balance, though lasting scars frequently remained. Senior Jedi Masters recognized that Force Rage rewarded aggression faster than meditation or peaceful solutions could counteract. The lure of immediate dominance made patience seem weak by comparison. Masters warned explicitly that relying on rage effectively eroded Jedi identity, reshaping knights into something unrecognizable. Force Rage users quickly abandoned diplomatic approaches, defaulting to violence as their preferred solution. Each victory made peaceful alternatives seem increasingly unnecessary, subtly shifting mindsets toward permanent aggression. One Jedi Master approached this dangerous territory without fully surrendering: Mace Windu. His combat form, Varpad, deliberately channeled elements of aggression and darkness into controlled, precise combat techniques. Windu walked carefully on the boundary separating controlled aggression from outright fury. Jedi scholars recorded that Windu never fully embraced rage. Instead, he utilized it indirectly, redirecting his opponent's dark energy rather than generating it himself. Varpad served as both combat style and philosophical statement, demonstrating precisely how close Jedi could approach darkness without succumbing. Yet despite Windu's careful navigation, many Jedi still regarded Varpad skeptically. They worried openly about younger Jedi misunderstanding Windu's teachings, mistakenly believing aggression could be controlled safely. Consequently, Varpad remained deliberately restricted, taught only under strict supervision to senior Jedi, already demonstrating exceptional emotional discipline. Masters repeatedly emphasized that Windu's remarkable self-control was rare and incredibly difficult to replicate. Sith Lords openly celebrated Force rage, viewing it as essential for achieving dominance. Sith apprentices received extensive training emphasizing anger's value as a limitless fuel source. Sith holocrons detailed methods for harnessing rage effectively, urging users toward continuous emotional intensity. Unlike Jedi caution, Sith instruction openly encouraged complete emotional surrender, teaching apprentices to embrace fury willingly. Sith valued Force rage precisely because it ensured aggression always overshadowed restraint. Today, Force rage occupies a quiet but troubling place within Jedi awareness. Masters mention it rarely, deliberately omitting specifics from lessons to minimize temptation. Jedi historians document past abuses carefully, hoping younger generations recognize clearly how quickly rage corrupts intentions. Privately, Jedi leaders acknowledge the difficult reality. Anger provides swift results, peace can't match immediately, but those results inevitably demand heavy personal sacrifices, undermining the Jedi mission entirely. Force rage thus remains banned explicitly due to its profound moral cost. Jedi Masters continually stress the need for disciplined emotional control, recognizing clearly how swiftly surrendering to rage erodes moral clarity. Its seductive potential endures silently, hidden deep within forbidden archives, reminding Jedi constantly that anger always comes packaged with loss. Jedi teachings consistently emphasize that inner peace provides the only sustainable path forward, quietly reminding every practitioner that true strength lies firmly rooted in emotional balance, not in fleeting fury. A Shatterpoint appears like a fracture, an invisible fault line through which everything, relationships, objects, destinies, can unravel instantly with the slightest pressure. It reveals truth, plain and undeniable, allowing its users to act decisively where others hesitate. Few Jedi throughout history developed this ability, and fewer still mastered it completely. Master Mace Windu remains its best-known practitioner, capable of sensing critical vulnerabilities within any situation. During battles, Windu could perceive precisely where an opponent's defense would fail, making him uniquely formidable. Jedi historians note battles won solely due to his uncanny insight, victories secured swiftly because he saw clearly what others could not. Windu's unmatched effectiveness convinced many Jedi that Shatterpoint, used wisely, provided an invaluable advantage. Yet Jedi viewed Shatterpoint with cautious respect and quiet apprehension. Unlike destructive abilities they condemned explicitly, Jedi found this gift troubling precisely because it exposed uncomfortable truths rather than outright violence. To see Shatterpoints clearly meant acknowledging imperfections that many preferred hidden. Jedi philosophers privately debated its ethical implications, recognizing clearly the fine line separating knowledge from exploitation. Master Windu himself expressed deep caution about teaching the ability widely, wary of apprentices misunderstanding its profound subtlety. The Jedi Order's discomfort stemmed partly from the inherent temptation Shatterpoints created. Perceiving weaknesses so vividly encouraged action, subtly urging Jedi to intervene forcefully. Every visible fracture invited pressure. The more clearly Jedi saw solutions, the more tempted they became to act aggressively, convinced immediate intervention was necessary. Masters warned repeatedly that identifying a Shatterpoint didn't always justify exploiting it. Restraint required intense discipline, humility, and an unwavering commitment to Jedi principles of patience and compassion. Jedi teachings emphasized maintaining balance, urging knights to guide events gently rather than dictate outcomes forcefully. Shatterpoint complicated this goal significantly. Jedi who relied heavily on this insight risked becoming overly confident, believing themselves uniquely qualified to fix problems decisively. They overlooked simpler, peaceful solutions, defaulting instead to rapid interventions. Even well-intentioned actions risked undermining free will, subtly imposing Jedi judgment over personal choice. Windu understood these risks intimately, carefully limiting his reliance on Shatterpoint insights. While other Jedi marveled openly at his effectiveness, Windu himself frequently downplayed its role. He repeatedly stressed emotional discipline, cautioning knights never to assume complete understanding of complex events. Windu recognized clearly that Shatterpoints revealed vulnerabilities, but rarely predicted precise consequences of exploiting them. Outcomes remained uncertain, shaped profoundly by unforeseen factors beyond even his extraordinary insight. Still, despite Windu's careful approach, other Jedi occasionally misunderstood Shatterpoint's complexity. Jedi archives quietly documented several incidents involving knights attempting hasty interventions after identifying Shatterpoints clearly. These efforts often created unintended harm, resulting in damaged relationships, resentment, or escalating conflicts further. Jedi Masters cited these examples privately during discussions, reminding students gently how easily arrogance or overconfidence clouded careful judgment. Outside Jedi circles, Sith Lords coveted Shatterpoint intensely, fascinated by its potential for manipulation and exploitation. Sith texts detailed elaborate methods for identifying weaknesses precisely, instructing apprentices explicitly how to exploit fractures ruthlessly. Sith valued Shatterpoints precisely because they allowed decisive dominance without brute force, quietly undermining opponents psychologically rather than physically. Sith holocrons whispered methods for recognizing vulnerabilities intuitively, tempting ambitious acolytes towards subtle mastery. But even Sith understood clearly Shatterpoint's double-edged nature. Apprentices warned openly that exposing others' weaknesses required first recognizing their own clearly, risking uncomfortable self-awareness. Sith Lords cautioned explicitly that Shatterpoints offered dangerous insight into their vulnerabilities, potentially eroding self-confidence crucial to Sith philosophy. Thus, even Sith approached this powerful gift cautiously, acknowledging quietly that clarity always carried emotional risk. Jedi continued limiting Shatterpoint knowledge carefully, teaching its principles indirectly rather than openly instructing techniques explicitly. Jedi lessons emphasized subtlety, encouraging knights toward intuitive awareness without explicitly naming Shatterpoints. Masters repeatedly cautioned younger Jedi, reminding them explicitly that insight required profound responsibility. Shatterpoints existed quietly within Jedi consciousness, whispering gentle reminders about humility, caution, and the limits inherent in even the deepest perceptions. Today, Jedi recognize clearly that some truths remain challenging precisely because they reveal vulnerabilities plainly. Shatterpoints illustrate vividly how easily clarity tempts decisive action, subtly urging Jedi toward confident interventions rather than patient observation. Masters acknowledge openly that knowledge always demands careful discipline, reminding Jedi constantly that seeing clearly isn't sufficient justification for immediate intervention. Restraint requires courage, humility, and constant self-awareness, qualities Jedi strive continually toward embodying fully. Ultimately, Shatterpoint endures quietly within Jedi tradition, respected deeply yet approached cautiously. Jedi teachings consistently remind knights that genuine strength requires compassion alongside clarity, patience balanced precisely with decisive action. Shatterpoints offer powerful insight, yet Jedi recognize clearly how easily knowledge tempts arrogance, subtly encouraging domination rather than gentle guidance. Jedi remain vigilant constantly, understanding profoundly that true wisdom lies quietly within disciplined humility, recognizing clearly vulnerabilities without automatically assuming responsibility for fixing every fracture immediately. Alter environment stands apart from most forbidden force techniques. It doesn't drain life, control minds, or fracture souls. Instead, it reshapes entire ecosystems through sheer willpower. With focused intent, a Jedi could manipulate weather patterns, encourage rapid plant growth, or even transform barren wastelands into thriving habitats. At first, this power seemed like a remarkable opportunity, offering solutions to famine, drought, or environmental collapse. But hidden beneath its promise lay consequences Jedi didn't fully understand until it was almost too late. During early exploration missions in uncharted regions, ambitious Jedi teams attempted using alter environment extensively. Their intentions were noble, driven by compassion and genuine desire to heal suffering worlds. Historical records quietly documented initial successes, once dead planets suddenly bursting into life, barren deserts blooming overnight, and rainfall revitalizing dried-up riverbeds. Jedi celebrated enthusiastically, convinced they'd discovered a miraculous solution for struggling civilizations everywhere. But optimism quickly faded as unforeseen side effects emerged. Jedi archivists noted subtle yet troubling changes following widespread use of alter environment. Weather patterns rapidly became unpredictable, shifting between extremes. Torrential rains flooding newly fertile valleys, followed suddenly by prolonged droughts turning lush forests to ashes. Plant life surged aggressively, overtaking existing species, destroying ecosystems it was intended to restore. Animals fled disrupted habitats, often perishing due to sudden climate instability. These unintended results quietly alarmed Jedi Masters, prompting deeper investigations into alter environment's mechanisms. Scientists collaborating closely with Jedi reported clearly that accelerated changes disrupted delicate balances necessary for stable ecosystems. Jedi intervention, however well-intentioned, unintentionally triggered chain reactions, destabilizing entire planetary systems. Senior Jedi documented privately their profound discomfort upon realizing how easily attempts at control spiraled unpredictably. One planet, detailed carefully in Jedi archives, illustrated vividly alter environment's subtle yet devastating potential. Initially praised as a triumph, the world quickly deteriorated following intervention. Once temperate climates rapidly devolved into chaotic extremes, driving indigenous populations toward desperation. Jedi teams attempted correcting their mistakes repeatedly, each effort intensifying existing instability. Eventually, Jedi leaders abandoned the project reluctantly, leaving behind devastated landscapes permanently scarred by their experiments. The disaster convinced Jedi Masters explicitly that reshaping environments required deeper understanding than they possessed. Jedi teachings emphasized respecting natural balance, carefully observing rather than forcefully intervening. Alter environment appeared contradictory, encouraging rapid solutions over patient understanding. Privately, Jedi leadership acknowledged discomfort with their assumptions, recognizing how swiftly arrogance could masquerade as compassion. Rather than openly forbidding alter environment, the Jedi Order chose bureaucratic silence instead. Jedi training materials quietly omitted details, deliberately reducing awareness gradually over generations. Younger Jedi rarely heard about the ability directly, learning vaguely that manipulating ecosystems carried significant risks. Official Jedi records contained only minimal references, carefully buried beneath layers of procedural complexity, preventing accidental rediscovery without explicitly banning it. Senior Jedi quietly agreed that forgetting served better than formal prohibitions. Force abilities explicitly banned often tempted curiosity, inspiring younger knights toward dangerous experiments. Quiet silence, however, effectively prevented dangerous knowledge from spreading widely, subtly removing temptation without sparking unnecessary fascination. Jedi Masters privately acknowledged how easily forbidden knowledge tempted ambitious minds, thus silence became their quiet solution. Yet despite Jedi caution, altar environment occasionally resurfaced through fragmented whispers. Explorers, historians, and fringe researchers stumbling upon isolated accounts inevitably became fascinated. Rumors described remarkable transformations accomplished quickly, planets blooming overnight from barren wastes. Jedi archivists investigating quietly discouraged such stories, gently guiding conversations toward more stable ecological practices, emphasizing patient restoration instead. Outside Jedi circles, independent researchers occasionally attempted replicating altar environments' results, typically ending tragically. Fringe scientists, misunderstanding its complexities, frequently created environmental disasters rivaling early Jedi attempts. Jedi historians documented quietly these tragic examples, carefully emphasizing clearly how quickly interventions spiraled disastrously. Jedi healers provided discreet assistance afterward, helping survivors rebuild patiently while firmly discouraging further reckless experiments. Today, altar environment remains carefully hidden, subtly buried within Jedi consciousness beneath bureaucratic layers of silence. Jedi scholars acknowledge privately that reshaping environments quickly offers seductive potential, but stress repeatedly its dangerous instability. Jedi teachings consistently encourage patient observation, humility, and gentle guidance rather than forceful control. Jedi remain cautiously aware that even noble intentions easily blur toward arrogance, subtly urging caution whenever rapid transformations seem tempting solutions. Ultimately, altar environment serves quietly as a powerful reminder within Jedi tradition. Jedi archivists document carefully past mistakes, emphasizing constantly how swiftly rapid interventions spiral unpredictably. Jedi Masters stress explicitly that genuine compassion requires profound humility, acknowledging clearly nature's complex interconnections rather than forcing simplistic solutions. Jedi remain committed continually to patient guidance, gentle understanding, and quiet respect toward environments they seek to heal. Altar environment quietly endures within Jedi memory, hidden deeply, yet whispering gentle cautions against assuming absolute knowledge about complexities they barely comprehend. Dead time meditation holds an especially enigmatic position within Jedi lore. Unlike most Force techniques that reshape, harm, or influence directly, this practice approaches reality itself from a profoundly different angle. Ancient monks described it in careful, whispered conversations as a means to pause the very flow of time, not altering history, not traveling through years, but simply suspending the immediate present. Seconds could stretch endlessly, the moment itself caught and held within a single breath of intense concentration. Documentation about dead time meditation remains scarce, surviving primarily through obscure references in ancient Jedi texts. Monastic orders far removed from galactic civilization first developed the concept, believing that mastery over perception could achieve profound stillness. Their writings spoke quietly about experiences in isolated temples, long meditation sessions blurring distinctions between seconds and hours, moments frozen in a state of perfect clarity. Jedi historians initially viewed these accounts skeptically, treating them as metaphorical teachings rather than practical instructions. However, a single account from centuries ago challenged that skepticism profoundly. A Jedi Knight, whose name Jedi archivists deliberately withheld, allegedly attempted dead-time meditation during a critical lightsaber duel. Witnesses described seeing a strange, radiant stillness envelop the combatants. Motion slowed abruptly, lightsaber blades halting mid-swing, sparks frozen silently in mid-air. Then, without warning, the Jedi vanished entirely from perception, leaving only empty silence and confusion. The duel simply stopped, yet it never resumed. To this day, historical records carefully omit further details, as though the Jedi and his opponent remained trapped eternally within that suspended moment. Jedi Masters debated passionately afterward whether the account was literal or metaphorical. Some argued it represented nothing more than symbolic teachings, warning against losing oneself within contemplation. Others insisted it described clearly an actual event, cautioning explicitly about attempting dangerous manipulation of perception itself. The uncertainty itself disturbed Jedi deeply. Masters expressed quiet concern about younger Jedi misunderstanding vague accounts, attempting reckless experiments out of misguided curiosity. Senior Jedi quietly acknowledged that pausing time, even briefly, carried profound ethical implications. Jedi teachings emphasized careful balance, embracing life's natural flow without forcefully interrupting it. Dead-time meditation directly contradicted that principle, deliberately freezing reality in unnatural stillness. Jedi philosophers privately considered what such acts implied about personal responsibility, questioning whether suspending moments constituted a selfish withdrawal from life's challenges. Yet because the technique was never conclusively demonstrated, the Jedi Order never explicitly forbade dead-time meditation. Instead, Jedi archivists quietly allowed references to fade gradually from training materials, carefully removing mentions from standard instruction without formally banning it. Younger Jedi rarely heard about dead-time meditation explicitly, learning indirectly only through vague philosophical discussions, emphasizing patience and humility. Meanwhile, curious scholars outside Jedi circles continued encountering isolated references within obscure texts, becoming fascinated by possibilities hinted at indirectly. The concept intrigued philosophers, historians, and mystics alike, inspiring speculative discussions about perception's nature and reality's deeper truths. However, concrete attempts at replicating dead-time meditation inevitably ended disappointingly. Fringe researchers typically dismissed ancient accounts as purely symbolic, concluding skeptically that genuine suspension remained impossible practically. Sith Lords occasionally encountered references within captured Jedi texts, interpreting them through different perspectives. Sith alchemists viewed dead-time meditation skeptically, doubting Jedi monks' claims. Sith philosophy emphasized dominance and immediate outcomes rather than contemplative stillness. They viewed prolonged meditation as weakness, ineffective compared directly with aggressive action. Sith records documented privately dismissive attitudes toward dead-time meditation, explicitly stating attempts wasted valuable energy better spent elsewhere. Yet even Sith occasionally recognized indirectly that altering perception provided certain strategic advantages. Sith texts described briefly methods for enhancing personal awareness or slowing subjective experiences during combat, though never genuinely suspending time entirely. Sith alchemists cautioned explicitly against excessive contemplation, warning openly about distraction risks weakening combat readiness. Today, dead time meditation quietly occupies Jedi consciousness primarily as philosophical caution rather than practical instruction. Jedi historians document carefully ancient accounts, consistently emphasizing clearly that genuine mastery remains deeply uncertain. Jedi Masters stress explicitly patience, humility, and acceptance regarding life's natural progression, recognizing clearly temptation inherent in seeking escape from difficult moments. Jedi teachings consistently encourage practitioners toward gentle acceptance, urging knights constantly toward active engagement rather than passive withdrawal. Yet despite deliberate omission from official teachings, dead time meditation whispers gently within Jedi tradition. Its enigmatic possibility reminds Jedi clearly how quickly curiosity tempts exploration into realities barely understood. Jedi remain quietly cautious, acknowledging privately dangers inherent in suspending life's natural rhythm, subtly encouraging students always toward respect for moments precisely as they unfold naturally. Ultimately, dead time meditation serves Jedi tradition quietly as profound caution about perception's subtle power. Jedi Masters continually emphasize clearly life's essential continuity, recognizing explicitly temptation inherent in manipulating moments themselves. Ancient accounts remind Jedi consistently how swiftly careful stillness blurs quietly toward dangerous withdrawal. Jedi continue stressing explicitly, genuine strength requires active presence fully engaged within life's ongoing flow, patiently embracing every fleeting moment precisely as it arises, never seeking permanent refuge within suspended silence. Jedi first encountered Doppelgänger prominently during Luke Skywalker's confrontation with the dark spirit of Exar Kun. In an intense struggle on Yavin 4, Skywalker employed this rare power to deceive and counteract the Sith Lord's lingering presence. His duplicate convincingly interacted with students and fought Kun's shadows, allowing Luke to act strategically from safety. Initially, this seemed like a remarkable achievement, proof of Doppelgänger's value as a defensive and tactical tool. But as Jedi scholars later analyzed Luke's encounter carefully, troubling insights emerged. The detailed realism of his duplicate raised unsettling philosophical questions. If a copy can behave, think, and speak identically to its creator, how do Jedi ensure the original remains clearly distinct? Historical accounts document privately Luke's own confusion following the experience, admitting quietly how hard it was afterward to separate the real from the duplicate. Jedi Masters became deeply concerned, recognizing clearly how easily identity blurred when duplicated convincingly. Further research revealed other troubling instances. Jedi archivists uncovered fragmented stories of ancient Force users employing doppelgangers in critical battles, diplomatic missions, or infiltration assignments. At first, these missions succeeded spectacularly, fooling even trained observers and enemies. But inevitably, Jedi who regularly used the technique reported subtle personality changes, memory lapses, or increasing doubt about their own authenticity. Their sense of individuality eroded gradually, damaged each time another perfect replica emerged. The Jedi Order swiftly understood that Doppelgänger directly undermined core Jedi teachings about personal awareness and self-control. Jedi philosophy emphasized a stable, disciplined sense of identity, firmly grounded in emotional balance and mindful presence. Creating convincing duplicates required dividing awareness intentionally, fragmenting consciousness in ways Jedi Masters found deeply troubling. Senior Jedi expressed privately their fears that regular duplication risked fracturing personalities permanently, leaving practitioners forever uncertain of their true self. Jedi training traditionally avoided techniques weakening internal discipline. Doppelgänger clearly violated this principle. Masters argued that even brief use subtly weakened identity over time, gradually dissolving clear boundaries between creator and duplicate. Each replication damaged self-awareness further, leaving practitioners increasingly uncertain about their genuine thoughts, memories, or emotions. Jedi recognized quickly that the emotional price outweighed tactical advantages significantly. Rather than explicitly banning Doppelgänger, Jedi authorities quietly ensured it faded quickly from official teachings. References disappeared subtly from curriculum materials, deliberately omitted from instructional archives and holocrons. Jedi Masters rarely discussed Doppelgänger openly, focusing instead on simpler, less psychologically hazardous illusions. Younger Jedi rarely encountered explicit descriptions, learning indirectly only through vague warnings emphasizing clear, disciplined identity as essential. Despite these precautions, Doppelgänger's quiet allure persisted subtly. Fringe Jedi, independent researchers and historians occasionally rediscovered fragmented records describing its remarkable effectiveness. Stories circulated quietly about perfect replicas appearing mysteriously during critical battles or diplomatic incidents, subtly influencing outcomes unnoticed initially. Jedi archivists quickly intervened, guiding conversations towards safer, simpler methods, explicitly warning about identity risks inherent in duplication. Sith Lords approached Doppelgänger with cautious interest. Sith teachings valued manipulation, deception, and subtle dominance highly. Sith alchemists admired its potential for infiltration or confusion, recognizing clearly how effectively perfect replicas could destabilize opponents psychologically. Sith holocrons detailed explicit instructions, teaching ambitious apprentices methods for creating convincing duplicates capable of sustained independent action, explicitly warning about potential psychological consequences. Yet Sith also understood clearly Doppelgänger's inherent risks. Sith philosophy valued strong individuality and relentless ambition explicitly. Sith Lords warned openly that regular duplication gradually undermined personal strength, eroding self-confidence necessary for dominance. Sith teachings described carefully instances of apprentices permanently losing their sense of self, becoming emotionally fragmented, weakened shadows uncertain of their original identity. Thus, even Sith approached Doppelgänger cautiously, acknowledging explicitly that strong individuality required stable, coherent identity. Today, Doppelgänger remains quietly hidden beneath Jedi awareness, rarely discussed explicitly, yet subtly cautioning practitioners about identity's fragile nature. Jedi teachings emphasize consistently maintaining clear, disciplined self-awareness, explicitly warning against actions weakening personal clarity. Jedi Masters acknowledge privately Doppelgänger's subtle dangers, emphasizing clearly the importance of emotional discipline, protecting identity from harmful fragmentation. Jedi historians continue carefully documenting past experiences, emphasizing explicitly how quickly identity erodes when deliberately fragmented. Jedi remain quietly vigilant against subtle temptations, promising tactical advantages at profound emotional cost. Doppelgänger serves Jedi consciousness gently as quiet caution about identity's subtle fragility, consistently reminding practitioners clearly how quickly duplication erodes stable self-awareness, quietly urging constant discipline, ensuring coherent identity remains firmly intact. Darth Trier exemplified its terrifying potential. Known for her subtle manipulation and relentless psychological warfare, she dismantled entire enemy factions without ever lifting her blade. Her victims, once proud warriors, collapsed into madness, unable to distinguish friend from foe, reality from nightmare. Historical accounts describe scenes of seasoned soldiers reduced to trembling figures, overwhelmed by visions uniquely tailored to their deepest fears. Tria's attacks were precise, invisible, and profoundly personal, exploiting vulnerabilities victims themselves barely understood. Sith teachings embraced Force insanity openly, celebrating its psychological dominance. Sith Lords detailed explicit instructions within hidden holocrons, training apprentices carefully to identify emotional weaknesses and exploit them relentlessly. For Sith, psychological collapse represented ultimate victory, superior even to physical death, leaving opponents permanently broken yet alive as living reminders of defeat. Sith philosophy respected strength achieved quietly through subtle manipulation, viewing Force insanity as its pinnacle. Yet Jedi regarded Force insanity with profound moral revulsion. Jedi teachings emphasized compassion, understanding, and empathy, values fundamentally incompatible with deliberate psychological destruction. Jedi healers and philosophers agreed unequivocally that directly assaulting someone's mind violated their deepest ethical codes. They argued passionately that physical wounds, however painful, allowed healing. Mental scars inflicted through Force insanity often remained permanent, leaving survivors haunted indefinitely. Historical archives documented carefully Jedi debates following exposure to Force insanity's devastation. Masters expressed deep discomfort, privately acknowledging the technique's undeniable tactical effectiveness, yet universally condemning its emotional cruelty. Senior Jedi consistently stressed explicitly that victory gained through psychological collapse corrupted their fundamental purpose. Jedi teachings deliberately omitted explicit references, cautioning students indirectly only through vague warnings, emphasizing emotional integrity and compassionate respect. But Jedi discomfort went beyond ethical objections alone. Force insanity subtly tempted practitioners towards psychological cruelty, subtly encouraging emotional detachment required to exploit vulnerabilities fully. Jedi Masters recognized clearly how swiftly intentional emotional harm eroded their own empathy. Gradually weakening internal discipline Jedi relied upon heavily. Even attempting defensive understanding risked subtle corruption, quietly undermining Jedi compassion through repeated exposure. Thus, Jedi chose deliberate avoidance rather than explicit prohibition. Training programs consistently emphasized compassionate emotional awareness, gently steering students away from temptations towards psychological dominance. Jedi healers openly discussed traumatic effects witnessed firsthand, privately counseling knights to avoid exploring emotional manipulation entirely. Jedi archivists quietly discouraged curiosity, deliberately burying explicit descriptions within restricted archives accessible solely by senior masters. Yet, despite Jedi precautions, Force insanity occasionally surfaced within galactic consciousness. Independent scholars investigating Sith lore discovered fragmented references describing vividly emotional devastation inflicted through invisible psychic assaults. Fringe researchers experimenting unwisely typically experience severe emotional damage firsthand, afterward publicly denouncing their efforts as dangerously reckless. Jedi healers provided discreet counseling afterward, guiding survivors toward gradual emotional recovery while firmly discouraging further attempts. Military commanders outside Jedi circles occasionally encountered Force insanity's devastating aftermath during conflicts against Sith opponents. Veterans described vividly comrades suddenly screaming uncontrollably, fleeing imagined horrors visible solely within their minds. Commanders recognized immediately psychological warfare's profound threat, urgently requesting Jedi assistance afterward. Jedi healers arrived swiftly, offering compassionate counseling and gentle rehabilitation, though permanent emotional scars frequently remained afterward. Today, Force insanity remains quietly buried beneath Jedi consciousness, deliberately obscured through careful omission rather than explicit prohibition. Jedi Masters consistently emphasize compassion's essential importance, explicitly warning knights how swiftly psychological cruelty corrupts internal discipline fundamentally. Jedi archivists document carefully past abuses, privately emphasizing explicitly that deliberately fracturing another's mind undermines everything Jedi teachings represent clearly. Force insanity thus serves Jedi tradition quietly, as profound caution about emotional integrity's subtle fragility. Jedi recognize consistently that victory achieved through psychological cruelty inevitably carries profound moral costs, undermining their essential purpose. Jedi teachings continually encourage practitioners toward genuine compassion, gently reminding students constantly how swiftly emotional detachment blurs subtly towards psychological cruelty. Ultimately, Force insanity quietly reminds Jedi explicitly how easily psychological dominance undermines emotional balance fundamentally. Jedi Masters stress repeatedly compassion's essential value, consistently cautioning knights explicitly against subtle temptations toward emotional cruelty, promising tactical advantages at profound moral cost. Jedi remain firmly committed constantly toward emotional integrity, recognizing clearly that genuine victory always respects mental health's profound fragility.